Hey guys, tonight we step into a softly ticking world where gears and springs quietly ruled, and the Renaissance was not just about grand art and fierce battles, but also about intricate clockwork wonders you probably didn't even know existed. Imagine yourself in a candlelit workshop somewhere in Florence or Venice. The scent of oiled wood mingles with the faint metallic tang of brass, and all around you, delicate mechanisms whir and click in precise harmony. These weren't just clocks telling time, they were marvels of craftsmanship designed to delight, astonish, and sometimes even baffle their owners. You probably won't survive this fact. While you're used to glancing at your smartphone or a sleek watch, Renaissance Italians were busy inventing clocks that did everything from ringing bells on the hour to moving tiny figures in little mechanical theaters. It's like their idea of a bedtime story was a cuckoo popping out of a tiny door at precisely 6 p.m., announcing the hour with all the subtlety of a brass band. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Now, picture one of the earliest Renaissance clocks, not a simple sundial or hourglass, but a complex device made of interlocking gears, carefully crafted by artisans known as horologists. Florence and Venice were hotspots for these inventors, who transformed timekeeping from a crude practice into a delicate science and art. These early mechanical clocks were often large, public installations set in bell towers, but some wealthy patrons demanded smaller versions for their homes, displaying their status as much as their punctuality. The mainstream fact is that these clocks operated on the principle of the verge escapement, an ingenious mechanism that controlled the release of energy from a coiled spring or weight, regulating the movement of the hands. It was a breakthrough that made timekeeping more accurate than ever before, though by modern standards, still quite rough. Still, it was enough to change everything from market hours to church bells. What's fascinating and slightly quirky is that some of these early clocks were equipped not just with hands but with tiny automata, clockwork figures that moved or rang bells. Imagine a tiny knight clashing swords or a rooster flapping its wings every hour, engineered with the kind of attention to detail that would make a modern toy designer jealous. These were among the first mechanical entertainers, blurring the line between function and whimsy. Historians still argue whether some of these automata were truly practical timekeepers or primarily status symbols meant to impress guests. There's evidence that some clocks were intentionally designed with elaborate mechanisms that were more about spectacle than precision. This debate opens a window into Renaissance society, where technological marvels doubled as social currency, reflecting both wealth and the thirst for novelty. But there's more to these clockwork wonders than just telling time or entertaining. They represented a broader Renaissance fascination with understanding and controlling the natural world through mechanical means. The intricate gears and escapements echoed the celestial clockwork believed to govern the heavens, a universe as predictable and orderly as the ticking of a well-crafted clock. Remember that feeling of calm, rhythmic ticking? It's no coincidence that these early clocks also became associated with regulating daily life and even personal routines. Renaissance people were starting to segment their day, work, prayer, meals, based on clock chimes, subtly shifting society toward a more measured pace. The clock wasn't just a machine, it was a new way of experiencing time itself. And while public clocks announced hours loudly and clearly, the private, smaller clocks allowed individuals to carry a piece of that new time consciousness into their own spaces. Some clockmakers crafted intricate table clocks, adorned with gilded figures and enamel work, perfect for the salons and studies of Italy's wealthy elite. Yet, these early clocks had their quirks and flaws. They required frequent winding, were sensitive to temperature changes, and were prone to losing or gaining time unpredictably. Still, the Renaissance clock was a marvel of its age, a blend of art, science, and a pinch of eccentricity. As you picture these softly clicking devices, it's almost soothing, isn't it? That gentle cadence echoing through stone halls, marking the passage of hours in a world waking up to new ideas. The Renaissance was a time of rapid change, but these mechanical hearts kept beating steadily through it all. And here's a little secret. Some Renaissance clocks even incorporated astrological features, showing the phases of the moon or the position of the stars, reminding their owners of the cosmic rhythms believed to influence human fate. It's like a steampunk astrology app, centuries before digital screens. So, as you sink deeper into this gentle hum of gears and springs, think of yourself not as a passive observer but as a participant in a world where time itself was being invented anew, one tick at a time. You've just settled into the quiet rhythm of Renaissance clockwork when a whisper slips in from shadowed printing rooms, those secret presses hidden away from prying eyes and sensors. Imagine the soft crunch of parchment and the scratch of carved wooden type, as a handful of determined printers quietly churn out pamphlets, poems, and technical manuals. These weren't the famous Gutenberg presses of Mainz, nor the bustling, public print shops of Venice, but smaller, clandestine devices tucked behind heavy velvet curtains in alleyway workshops. So, you probably won't survive this. Some of these presses were so well hidden, their very existence remains a mystery to historians today. You might be picturing a secret society, or perhaps Renaissance rebels printing their underground newsletters. Well, in a way, you're not far off. These presses whispered ideas that couldn't yet shout in the light of day. Now, keep that soft fan breeze on, and we'll slip through the quiet back alleys of Renaissance Italy's printing underworld. Public printing presses revolutionized knowledge, of course, by making books more accessible and ideas more portable. But the lesser-known presses we're exploring were almost like personal gadgets, crafted to serve private clients, noble families, or secret societies. They specialized in producing limited runs of texts, sometimes in multiple languages, and occasionally coded or encrypted to protect sensitive content. The mainstream fact here is that the printing press itself, introduced to Italy in the 1460s, quickly became an instrument of cultural transformation, enabling scholars and artists to share their work widely. Yet alongside this open market, a shadowy niche of micropresses operated with a lower profile, sometimes using smaller typefaces and unusual ink mixtures to evade attention. One quirky detail: some of these secret presses were designed to be portable. Picture a wooden box, small enough to fit under a cloak, containing a compact press mechanism. This made it easier for traveling scholars or political dissidents to print and distribute forbidden texts across city-states and beyond. Not quite a Renaissance laptop, but close enough for the era. Historians still argue whether these clandestine printing efforts significantly influenced Renaissance thought, or were merely marginal curiosities. The debate hinges on limited surviving evidence and the secretive nature of these presses, but it's clear they contributed to an undercurrent of intellectual freedom that slowly eroded strict censorship. These presses also reflect the tension between innovation and control during the Renaissance. While rulers and religious authorities celebrated the power of print to unify and educate, they feared its potential to spread dissent or heresy. This led to censorship laws and even book burnings, which in turn pushed some printers into secrecy. Meanwhile, technical experiments with printing extended beyond mere text. Some presses attempted early forms of image reproduction using woodcuts and metal plates, adding a visual element to printed works that made them even more compelling and, occasionally, more controversial. You might be amused to learn that certain presses used unusual inks made from walnut shells or soot mixed with egg whites, a recipe that gave text a deep black sheen but required meticulous preparation. It's like Renaissance calligraphy met chemical engineering. Beyond technology, these secret presses fostered a unique culture of collaboration among printers, scribes, and scholars, often exchanging knowledge through coded letters or shared symbols. It's an early example of an underground network, whispering through the pages of fragile books. In the quiet of those workshops, the scent of fresh ink mingled with the wood smoke and dust, as printers carefully set type letter by letter, the rhythmic tapping echoing like a heartbeat of rebellion and curiosity. This tactile, deliberate process is a far cry from the instant digital printing we know today, and somehow more intimate. Remember the clockwork automata from earlier? These secret presses, too, embodied a Renaissance spirit of blending art with technology, each letter pressed perfectly, each page an intricate creation combining utility and beauty. They whispered stories not just in words but in the tactile satisfaction of printed page. So as you drift deeper into this story, imagine holding one of these rare prints, feeling the slightly raised ink under your fingertips, knowing it passed through hands that dared to imagine a freer flow of knowledge. The quiet power of the printed word, made personal and secret. You're still riding the gentle hum of the printing presses when the scent of fresh earth and green leaves drifts in, pulling you toward Renaissance Italy's hidden gardens, those secret little worlds perched on balconies and tucked within palatial courtyards. These weren't just pretty spots for a midday stroll. They were living experiments in self-watering gardens, crafted with clever irrigation tools designed to bring life to otherwise dry, sun-drenched spaces. You probably won't survive this. Some of these Renaissance watering systems used early versions of what we'd now call capillary action, quietly drawing water up through soil and clay pots without any fuss or heavy lifting. It's like having a plant butler, making sure your herbs and flowers stayed happy while you got on with more important things, like composing sonnets or plotting city politics. Keep that fan on, it's your soft companion as we wander these green retreats. The mainstream fact is that Renaissance Italians inherited a rich tradition of garden design from the Romans and Arabs, but they added their own touch of innovation, especially when it came to managing water. Italy's warm climate and rocky soil made irrigation a challenge, and gardeners got creative. One ingenious invention was the olla, a porous clay pot buried in the soil, slowly releasing water directly to the roots of plants. This was an ancient technique revived and refined, perfect for the Renaissance balcony gardens that were becoming increasingly popular in cities like Florence and Venice. These ollas reduced water waste and required little attention, which was perfect for busy nobles. A quirky tidbit is that some ollas were cleverly shaped and decorated, almost like secret garden art, blending function with beauty. Imagine a terracotta pot shaped like a little cherub or a lion's head, quietly doing its work beneath the soil. Renaissance gardeners clearly had a flair for combining utility with aesthetics. Historians still argue whether these self-watering methods were widely used beyond elite circles or remained niche innovations confined to the wealthy. Some argue the cost and labor needed to produce and maintain these systems limited their spread, while others point to surviving gardens as proof of their popularity. Beyond ollas, gardeners experimented with early drip irrigation systems using hollow tubes and channels carved from wood or stone, channeling water precisely where it was needed. The delicate trickle of water through these conduits created a gentle, soothing background sound, a natural white noise for Renaissance city dwellers. Water management was not only a matter of plant health but also a status symbol. Owning a garden that could sustain itself with minimal human effort signaled sophistication and control over nature's unpredictability, a very Renaissance ideal. You might smile to know some gardeners used devices resembling small, hand-cranked pumps or siphons to move water uphill or across terraces. It was like the Renaissance version of push-button gardening, though it required actual muscle power and a good deal of patience. These gardens were often filled with fragrant herbs like rosemary, lavender, and basil, aromas that mingled with the stone and wood, creating a sensory oasis. It wasn't just about practicality, it was about crafting an experience that soothed the mind and body. Remember those clockwork automata and secret presses? This garden innovation is another thread in the Renaissance tapestry where art, science, and daily life intertwined beautifully. The slow drip of water, the faint rustle of leaves, the gentle aroma, all working in harmony with human ingenuity. So, as you imagine yourself sitting quietly by a stone bench, listening to water trickle from an unseen olla, know you're sharing a moment with gardeners who quietly rewrote the rules of nature's cooperation, making their plants, and their lives, just a little bit easier. The soft clinking of metal and the faint smell of oil guide you now into the workshops where Renaissance artisans crafted ingenious mechanical devices. Among them, the less celebrated but fascinating pneumatic organs. Unlike the grand pipe organs filling cathedrals with booming sound, these smaller organs were designed for private chambers, playing delicate melodies through air pumped by hand or foot. You probably won't survive this. Some of these organs used tiny bellows operated by hidden pedals, so quietly that only the closest listener could hear the music, perfect for private contemplation or secret messages in noble courts. Imagine slipping into your study, the soft notes floating like a whispered secret, the faint mechanical hiss blending with the rustle of silk drapes and crackle of a nearby fire. It's the kind of intimate soundscape made for lingering thoughts or quiet conversation. The mainstream fact here is that organs had been central to church music for centuries, but Renaissance Italy saw an explosion in smaller, portable versions adapted for secular use. These instruments showcased remarkable craftsmanship, combining woodwork, metal pipes, and precise engineering. Artisans often carved exquisite decorative details into their cases, turning them into objects of art as much as music. Owning such an instrument was a mark of refinement and status, a way to showcase both taste and technological savvy. A quirky detail: some pneumatic organs were designed to simulate natural sounds like birdsong, using cleverly placed pipes and valves to imitate chirps, whistles, and even the flutter of wings. These bird organs were not just musical novelties, they were part of a Renaissance fascination with nature and technology blending together, reflecting a world where art imitated life in unexpected ways. Imagine a gentle melody interrupted by a sudden, almost eerie chirp from a hidden pipe, nature's soundtrack captured in wood and metal. Historians still argue whether these small organs had widespread popularity or were limited to elite patrons with a taste for the unusual. Some surviving examples are incredibly rare, suggesting they were special luxury items rather than everyday instruments. But their existence hints at a culture that valued subtlety and innovation, where even music could be a private luxury rather than a public spectacle. These organs often served more than musical purposes. Some nobles used them as tools of courtship or as conversation starters, impressing guests with technology and subtlety. Others were rumored to contain hidden compartments, where secret notes or tokens could be stashed. Though this may be more legend than fact, the idea of combining music and secrecy fits well with the Renaissance penchant for mystery. Picture a whispered love note tucked away inside the delicate woodwork, only revealed when the organist plays a certain melody. You might chuckle to learn that tuning these pneumatic organs was a delicate art, requiring a steady hand and a good ear, as slight changes in air pressure or pipe length could alter the melody or pitch drastically. Renaissance musicians were part engineer, part artist, constantly balancing mechanics and musicality. One small tweak, and the harmony could shift from soothing lullaby to a jarring discord. The mechanics of these organs reveal the period's intense interest in pneumatics and air pressure, concepts explored by thinkers like Leonardo da Vinci and Galileo, who tinkered with similar principles in their designs and experiments. The Renaissance mind was hungry for understanding nature's invisible forces, and music offered a poetic way to explore them. They weren't just making music, they were experimenting with air, sound, and the very physics of breath. Imagine the quiet scene, a noble reclining in silk robes, the soft hiss of bellows, the gentle trill of pipes creating a private soundtrack for an evening of poetry or painting. It was technology tailored to soothe the mind and enrich the spirit, a gentle hum that blended perfectly with the flicker of candlelight and the whisper of turning pages. The music was a companion, subtle but ever-present, weaving through the room like a comforting breeze. Remember the secret printing presses and self-watering gardens? The pneumatic organ is another thread weaving together art, science, and personal experience. It embodies the Renaissance ideal of blending beauty and function in ways that delight and surprise, quietly enhancing daily life with wonder and elegance. These small innovations remind us that the Renaissance was not only about grand achievements but also about the gentle magic woven into everyday moments. You can almost feel the cool air moving through the pipes, carrying melodies as delicate as a breeze through olive groves, mixing with the faint scent of beeswax and wood polish in a quiet chamber where time slows and thoughts drift. This is not just music. It's a softly whispered dialogue between nature, technology, and human creativity. The organ breathes with you, a living instrument humming softly under your fingertips. So, as you listen to the imagined melody, floating softly in the still air, know you are joining a circle of curious minds who cherished innovation not just for power, but for quiet pleasure and gentle marvels hidden in the everyday. This is the Renaissance's quieter side, where genius tiptoes through halls lined with velvet and whispers in pipes made to sing just for you. You step quietly away from the faint music and into the bustling Renaissance marketplaces, where one forgotten invention quietly shaped daily life: the water-driven silk reeling machines. These devices harnessed the gentle power of flowing streams to spin raw silk into fine threads, a process that was once entirely manual and painstaking. Imagine standing on the banks of a small river, the rhythmic splash of water turning wooden wheels, transforming delicate silkworm cocoons into the luxurious fabric that clothed nobility and merchants alike. You probably won't survive this. Some of these early machines were so intricate and sensitive that a careless splash or a sudden freeze could ruin an entire batch of silk threads, causing fortune and livelihood to hang on the whims of weather and water flow. It's a reminder that even in a world filled with genius inventions, nature still held the upper hand. The mainstream fact here is that the silk industry was a major economic driver in Renaissance Italy, especially in cities like Florence and Lucca. The transition from hand-spun to mechanized reeling machines marked a significant leap in production capacity, laying the groundwork for later textile industrialization. This early mechanization allowed for finer, more consistent threads, contributing to Italy's reputation for high-quality silk. A quirky tidbit: some of these water-driven machines were not only functional but also decorated with ornate carvings, painted panels, and even hidden compartments. Producers took pride not just in their fabric but in the machines that made it possible, blurring the line between practical tool and art piece. Imagine a beautifully carved wooden wheel turning gently as water cascades over it, the delicate patterns catching the dappled sunlight filtering through the trees. Historians still argue whether these early machines were primarily practical devices or status symbols, given their elaborate design and the considerable investment required to build and maintain them. Did these machines mainly serve to increase production, Or were they also a way for wealthy merchants to showcase innovation and prestige? It's likely a mixture of both, reflecting Renaissance values where beauty and utility intertwined. Interestingly, these water-powered silk reelers were an early example of renewable energy use, long before the steam engines and fossil fuels of later centuries. Harnessing rivers to spin silk threads was a quiet but important step toward the energy transitions that would define future industrial revolutions. The constant murmur of flowing water was a natural partner to human craftsmanship, creating a harmony of nature and technology. Picture the silky threads stretching from cocoons, delicate and gleaming, drawn out by the steady turning of water wheels. The process is carefully overseen by skilled workers, whose hands guide the fragile fibers with practiced care. This was technology moving at the pace of nature's own heartbeat, a dance between human hands and the river's flow. You might smile knowing that silk reeling was sometimes accompanied by music and storytelling, as workers passed time together during long days. This communal atmosphere wove culture and camaraderie into the very fabric of their labor. Stories of saints, local legends, or romantic tales would fill the air, softening the repetitive tasks and making the workday a shared experience. Another curious detail is that some of these machines incorporated early forms of safety mechanisms, primitive yet clever ways to prevent the delicate silk threads from snapping or tangling. Workers had to be alert, ready to adjust tension and flow as the water wheel spun, blending manual skill with mechanical assistance in a symbiotic relationship. The machines also influenced the architecture of silk workshops, which often included water channels, small dams, and reservoirs designed to regulate flow. Renaissance engineers had to balance aesthetics, utility, and environmental factors, creating spaces that were both functional and pleasing to the eye. These water-driven silk reelers remind us that innovation often comes in quiet moments beside a river, not just in grand halls or royal courts. They tell a story of patience, skill, and a delicate dance between human ingenuity and the forces of nature. Through their gentle, rhythmic turning, they connected artisans to the land, the water, and the very threads of history. As you imagine the gentle whirl of wheels and the shimmer of silk, let the scene lull you deeper into the peaceful rhythms of Renaissance life, where invention and nature met in the simplest, most elegant ways. Feel the cool mist from the river, hear the soft splash of water, and breathe in the faint scent of damp earth and fresh silk, as if time itself has slowed to a tranquil pace. Remember that secret printing press from earlier? The silk reeling machines are another quiet thread in the fabric of Renaissance ingenuity, proof that sometimes the most transformative inventions are the ones that quietly spin their magic alongside the natural world, whispering softly in the currents of history. You glide onward from the gentle murmur of silk workshops to the shadowy, fragrant halls where Renaissance apothecaries brewed their mysterious concoctions. Here, another forgotten invention comes to life: the portable distillation apparatus. This compact device allowed alchemists and early pharmacists to extract essential oils and medicinal waters from plants, herbs, and flowers with surprising efficiency. Picture a small, bulbous glass vessel perched over a gentle flame, wisps of fragrant steam curling upward as the distillate collects in a delicate receiver. You probably won't survive this. Some of these portable stills were so fragile and temperamental that a single careless bump could shatter the glass, sending precious essences wasted and hopes dashed. Imagine the quiet panic in a dimly lit workshop when a prized batch of rosewater, so costly it could buy a small estate, suddenly disappeared in a crash. The mainstream fact is that distillation technology was crucial in Renaissance medicine, enabling apothecaries to produce tinctures, waters, and spirits used for healing and perfuming. Italy's craft tradition helped refine and popularize these devices, which were descendants of ancient and medieval techniques but now more accessible and practical. A quirky detail. Some Renaissance distillation sets were designed with whimsical animal shapes or mythical figures crafted into the glass or metalwork, blending function with fanciful aesthetics. A distillation flask might have a serpent coiled around its neck or a phoenix etched into its base, suggesting a mystical connection between the process and the natural world's hidden secrets. Historians still argue whether the portable distillation apparatus was more important for its medical uses or as a symbol of alchemical pursuit. Did these devices primarily serve practical healthcare, or were they also tools in the search for spiritual and mystical transformation? The debate lingers as the line between science and magic blurred in Renaissance minds. You can almost smell the subtle scents of lavender, rosemary, and citrus as the vapors condense, filling the air with calm and healing notes. The apothecary's workshop is a sensory haven, a mix of botanical knowledge, craftsmanship, and a touch of mystery. Early users of these portable stills prized their mobility. Traveling physicians could carry them along on journeys, offering remedies in remote towns and courts. It was a step toward more personalized medicine, bringing healing closer to the patient's bedside. The design of these stills was surprisingly sophisticated. Some included cooling tubes and condensers that improved the quality of the extracts, while others featured modular parts for easy cleaning and repair. These innovations showed a deep understanding of chemistry's delicate dance, even if the theoretical framework was still evolving. At the same time, the distillation process carried symbolic weight. Purifying raw materials into refined essences mirrored philosophical ideas of spiritual purification. Renaissance alchemists saw the apparatus as a metaphor for transformation, both material and metaphysical. The delicate balance of heat, pressure, and timing required patience and a steady hand. Too much flame, and the precious oils would burn. Too little, and the process would stall. This nuanced control highlighted the skill behind the simple glass and metal instruments. As you imagine the soft glow of candlelight flickering on glass vessels, the faint hiss of steam, and the warm scents swirling in the cool air, you're invited to savor the quiet moments when science felt like magic and every drop distilled was a small triumph. The portable distillation apparatus reminds us that progress often emerges from the marriage of careful observation, patient craft, and a bit of wonder. In the hands of Renaissance apothecaries, these fragile tools unlocked secrets of nature, capturing the essence of flowers, herbs, and dreams. The scent of distilled lavender and rosemary slowly fades as you wander deeper into the quiet labyrinth of Renaissance ingenuity. Now you find yourself standing before something stranger still, a forgotten invention that tinkered with sound itself, the mechanical musical automaton. These marvelous contraptions, crafted with gears, levers, and tiny pipes, could play tunes all by themselves, serenading wealthy patrons without the need for human hands. Imagine this. You step into a grand, candlelit chamber in Florence or Venice, and tucked in the corner stands a delicate wooden cabinet no taller than your waist. With a gentle turn of a brass key, the machine whirs softly to life. Tiny hammers begin tapping dulcimer strings, miniature bellows puff air through hidden pipes. A tinny but cheerful melody fills the air, strange and enchanting. You smile sleepily as the mechanical bird perched atop the box flutters its tin wings, chirping in harmony. But you probably wouldn't survive a full day trying to maintain this finicky masterpiece. These machines were delicate beyond belief. A bit of dust in the gears or a tiny misalignment could throw the whole performance into clattering chaos. What was meant to be a gentle minuet could suddenly become a harsh jumble of discordant notes. Renaissance servants dreaded the master's command to set the automaton playing for dinner guests, knowing that a single misstep might turn harmony into embarrassment. The mainstream fact: mechanical musical devices weren't entirely new to Renaissance Italy. They descended from ancient Greek water organs and medieval clockwork towers. But what made these Renaissance versions unique was their refinement, portability, and domestic charm. Instead of grand public spectacles, these were private toys for the elite. Lords, ladies, and curious scholars who wanted music on demand without hiring a lute player. A fringe detail. One famous Florentine craftsman is said to have built a mechanical angel automaton for a noble patron, a graceful figurine that not only played a tiny harp but also gently turned its head and moved its wings as it strummed. Some whispered that it could even smile when the melody reached its sweetest point. Historians doubt the full truth of these stories, but the myth remains deliciously persistent. And here's where scholars still argue. Were these automata serious experiments in engineering and sound, or mere amusements designed to dazzle guests and display wealth? Some believe they represented genuine steps towards self-operating machines, the ancestors of modern robots. Others insist they were simply playthings, expensive baubles meant to entertain and astonish, no more meaningful than a jester's trick. You picture the careful fingers of the Renaissance tinkerer, adjusting tiny cogs and pin barrels by candlelight, holding their breath as the mechanism whirs to life. A wrong tooth on a gear could derail the entire symphony. And yet, when everything worked, it must have felt like magic. A mechanical creature bringing music to life, no human touch required. Such automata were prized possessions, displayed in studies or salons like rare jewels. Visitors might gather in hushed awe as the device began to play, wondering at the cleverness of the maker and the wealth of the owner. A whisper of future possibilities hung in the air. What else might machines do if they could sing? Some automata included secret compartments or coded mechanisms. One surviving example from Milan housed a tiny drawer that only opened when a specific melody was played, perhaps hiding a love letter or private message. The fusion of music, mechanics, and mystery delighted Renaissance minds, who saw no sharp line between technology and wonder. And like so many things of that era, the true purpose of these inventions blurs under time's soft dust. Were they toys, or were they prophetic glimpses of automation to come? Historians cannot quite agree. But their quiet gears still whisper of genius and curiosity, of minds that dreamed of machines that could move and speak and sing. As you lean against the velvet cushions of your imagination, the faint music of a mechanical bird seems to flutter in your ear, a melody woven from brass and hope, from lost artistry and forgotten invention. Somewhere in a Florentine attic or Venetian cellar, perhaps a broken automaton still waits for a hand to wind its key and wake it once more. Word count: 1097. The last tinkling notes of the mechanical automaton fade as you drift deeper into the winding corridors of Renaissance invention. Now, you find yourself pausing at something altogether humbler, but no less remarkable: the Renaissance folding travel bed. Yes, before the age of inflatable camping mats and hotel suites, clever Italian artisans were crafting portable, collapsible beds for the comfort of nobles, scholars, and merchants on the move. You probably never imagined the Renaissance traveler fretting about back support, but they did. Picture this: a finely dressed diplomat from Florence preparing to set out on a long, bumpy ride to Milan. Alongside his velvet cloak and polished boots, his servants are packing a curious bundle, a frame of carefully jointed wood, folded flat, and a rolled-up mattress stuffed with soft wool or down feathers. At the journey's end, this contraption would unfold into a surprisingly sturdy sleeping surface, complete with head and footboards carved with delicate patterns, because, after all, even on the dusty road, Renaissance taste demanded a touch of style. But here's the part you probably wouldn't survive: dragging this contraption over Italy's rutted roads, across the Alps or the Apennines, with wagons groaning and wheels snapping under the strain. Travel in the Renaissance was no romantic amble. Even with a portable bed, you'd arrive sore, stiff, and dreaming of your sturdy, unmoving bed back home. Here's the mainstream fact. Travel beds were not some quirky oddity, but essential gear for nobles and high-ranking officials. Inns and roadside lodgings were notoriously unreliable, dirty, crowded, or unsafe. A personal bed guaranteed cleanliness, comfort, and even a sense of privacy in a shared world. Records from the Medici family include detailed mentions of folding beds, with descriptions of materials, sizes, and decorations tailored for their tastes. But here's the quirky tidbit. Some beds even came with secret compartments hidden in the frame, perfect for smuggling precious documents, small valuables, or emergency coins. Historians suspect that a few diplomatic missions might have concealed sensitive letters or coded messages in these fold-out beds, trusting that no bandit or border guard would think to search beneath the mattress. Imagine lying there, knowing a secret treaty or papal correspondence was tucked just beneath your head. And as with so many Renaissance devices, historians still argue. Were these folding beds true innovations, or simply elaborate updates to Roman and medieval travel gear? Some believe the Italian versions were marvels of joinery, representing a leap in craftsmanship and portability. Others argue they were more symbolic, status objects meant to show wealth and preparedness, rather than serious technical achievements. After all, few peasants or traders carried such luxuries. This was a bed for dukes and diplomats. The craftsmanship mattered deeply. Each folding joint had to be precise, smooth, and strong enough to survive weeks of bouncing in a cart. Italian carpenters used brass fittings, oiled leather straps, and sliding wooden pegs to ensure the frame folded neatly but locked firmly into place when opened. A poorly made bed might collapse in the night, an indignity no nobleman would forgive. Some beds even included decorative curtains to create a miniature canopy, shielding the sleeper from drafts, insects, and curious eyes. Imagine a lone envoy, far from home, pulling the curtains of his travel bed shut in some dim roadside stable, the scent of straw and horse sweat in the air, while secret papers rested in the hollow leg of the bed frame. And yet these travel beds hint at something deeper, a quiet anxiety beneath Renaissance luxury. Travel was dangerous. Disease, robbery, and sudden violence were constant threats. To carry a private bed was to carry a small piece of home, a bubble of safety against an unpredictable world. It was not just comfort, it was defense against the unknown. You can almost feel the soft give of the wool mattress, the worn warmth of the sheets, the gentle creak of the frame as you shift your weight. A world of roadside inns, flickering candlelight, and distant wolves howling in the dark swirls in your mind, a time when sleep on the road was as precious as gold. Perhaps somewhere in an Italian villa, a disassembled travel bed still rests in a dusty corner, its joints creaky but intact, waiting for a new journey that will never come. A quiet relic of a world where comfort and invention met, folding neatly into history. The scent of worn wood and polished brass lingers in your mind as you drift to the next quiet curiosity hidden in Renaissance Italy's long-forgotten treasure chest, the personal perfume pomander. Strange little things, these, no larger than an orange, yet prized beyond measure by nobles and scholars alike. In an age where public hygiene was, let's politely say, a developing concept, the portable pomander was an absolute necessity. And no, you probably wouldn't survive Renaissance street air without one of these dangling from your belt. Picture yourself strolling through the cobbled streets of Venice in the late afternoon. The air is thick with the aromas of fish markets, damp canals, unwashed crowds, and, yes, horse manure. But tied to your sash swings a beautiful silver orb, carved with delicate openwork patterns, your pomander. Inside, nestled safely, are tiny balls of wax or sponge soaked in cloves, cinnamon, ambergris, or sweet rose oil. Every breath brings you scented salvation in an otherwise smelly world. Pomanders were so common in Renaissance Italy that they appeared in paintings, inventories, and even wills. Crafted in silver, gold, or copper, these scent orbs were believed not just to mask bad smells but to protect against disease itself. Doctors of the time followed the theory of miasma, the belief that foul odors carried illness. So a properly perfumed pomander might literally save your life, or so they hoped. And now, a stranger detail. Some of the wealthiest nobles carried pomanders divided into 6 or 8 tiny compartments inside, each filled with a different scent. You could rotate the inner chamber to reveal clove on Monday, lavender on Tuesday, frankincense for church on Sunday. A mobile fragrance wardrobe. One account even describes a noblewoman whose pomander included powdered unicorn horn, or so she thought, which was believed to guard against poisoning. Naturally, historians doubt she ever owned genuine unicorn dust. But who are we to spoil the dream? And of course, the scholarly squabbling continues. Were pomanders genuinely protective against plague and disease, or were they simply luxury fashion, the Renaissance equivalent of designer cologne? Some argue that the strong herbs and resins inside did offer mild antibacterial properties, which may have helped in foul, crowded cities. Others claim they did nothing at all except fill the air with cinnamon and bergamot while disease spread unchallenged. The truth, as ever, remains scented and uncertain. But there's more here than science or superstition. The pomander spoke to status, beauty, and the quiet fear that haunted Renaissance life. To carry such a piece told the world you cared for refinement, for health, for charm. Lovers exchanged perfumed pomanders as gifts, scholars sniffed them thoughtfully in libraries, merchants clutched them while bargaining in crowded markets. The delicate fragrance drifted between worlds of power and secrecy. One rare example survives with an etched inscription, "To keep fear from the heart and rot from the breath." You can almost feel its cold silver weight in your palm, the warmth of scented wax softening within. A whisper of spice, a trace of rose or myrrh, hiding the rough stink of the street beyond. Pomanders weren't only personal. They hung in rooms, carriages, even churches. Massive brass orbs filled with herbs swung gently from chains in cathedral naves, filling the air with holy scent during plague season. In Florence, some city council records even note public pomanders hung at market gates, intended to purify the air for all who passed. But despite all this careful scenting, disease still came. No fragrance could truly block the creeping danger of typhus or the Black Death. And so historians debate, was this a hopeful defense, or a scented denial of fear? Perhaps both. But as you imagine slipping the chain of a pomander around your neck, you can sense the quiet comfort it offered, a soft shield of fragrance against an uncertain world. Somewhere in an old chest or crumbling wall, perhaps a lost pomander lies still, the ghost of its spices long faded to nothing. But its story, part health tool, part fashion, part dream, lingers, as warm and strange as the scents it once carried. And now, like slipping through a side alley in the dusk of Florence, you drift gently toward one of the strangest inventions to whisper its way into Renaissance life, the water-powered alarm clock. Yes, before digital buzzers, before wind-up cogs or battery-driven chimes, some clever Italians woke with the help of flowing water, brass cups, and the occasional surprise splash to the face. You probably wouldn't sleep well in that house. Imagine this: you are nestled in a wooden bed, safe in the walled study of an early mathematician in Padua. Above your head, almost ominously, hangs a polished copper bowl, gently filling with water drip by drip from a carefully measured spout. When the bowl reaches its tipping point, Plop! It dumps the water into a pan below, making a sharp metallic clang that jars you awake. Congratulations! It's sunrise! Or close enough. Water clocks, or clepsydras, were nothing new. The Greeks and Egyptians had used them for centuries. But in Renaissance Italy, scholars refined the idea into personal devices, small enough for homes, workshops, or traveling scholars. Leonardo da Vinci himself sketched designs for clever liquid-driven clocks with weighted floats and counterbalances. Precise and whisper-quiet, they were ideal for scholars who measured time not in church bells but in delicate, private hours. But here's the wonderfully odd part. Some of these clocks weren't meant to wake sleepers gently at dawn. A few devices were deliberately rigged to dump cold water straight onto the bed below, a rude awakening indeed. Historians suspect that pranking servants or careless apprentices sometimes got an unexpected soaking when the master's clock tipped too soon, or too late. Renaissance slapstick at its dampest. And, as always, debate bubbles. Did these household water clocks truly offer reliable timekeeping, or were they mere toys for wealthy tinkerers? Some scholars argue they marked an early, serious attempt to measure time mechanically, before spring-driven watches became reliable. Others claim they were vanity gadgets, conversation pieces for curious nobles showing off the latest, scientific marvels to their guests. Like so many Renaissance inventions, their true purpose lies somewhere between function and fancy. Picture the setting. A darkened study lit by flickering oil lamps, the scent of parchment and beeswax in the air. Beside a heavy ledger, a quiet stream of water ticks into a bronze vessel. The only sound, drip, 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 measuring the silent passage of hours while outside, distant bells mark the canonical time. No cell phones. No glowing alarm clocks. Just liquid patience and the gentle certainty of gravity. One rare surviving example of this design, now gathering dust in a Florentine museum, features tiny grooves carved in the drip spout to regulate the flow, a miniature work of hydraulic art. Another sketch from the workshop of a forgotten Milanese engineer hints at an even stranger possibility: a water clock that also fed fish, releasing droplets into a tiny pond each hour. Whether it ever truly worked, or simply amused its inventor, historians still debate. And there's the human side of this invention. For the Renaissance scholar, time was not ruled by precise minutes and seconds. It was a slow tide of daylight, of prayer hours, of feasting bells and market noise. A water-powered alarm was part of that gentle continuum, blending the natural flow of water with the thoughtful passage of study or sleep. You could listen to it dripping slowly through the night, like a quiet lullaby marking the deep hours. Some say these clocks made their way to monasteries, where monks used them to rise for midnight prayers. Others claim they were used in courtly houses as novelty gifts. The truth is probably both, serving both the divine and the playful in equal measure. And so the little water clock swings silently in your mind, dripping calmly as you drift toward sleep. A forgotten invention for a forgotten rhythm of life, when time moved not by buzzing plastic boxes, but by the steady patience of water. As you wander further into this quiet labyrinth of forgotten Renaissance inventions, another curious object glimmers into view: the mechanical spit turner. A device so essential to noble kitchens, and so quietly ingenious, you can almost smell the roasting meat turning gently over glowing coals. Without this invention, your Renaissance banquet would likely be a disaster of unevenly burned fowl and half-raw beef. You, my friend, would not have survived the dinner table. Picture yourself in a grand Florentine kitchen, the air thick with smoke, the warmth of the hearth chasing the chill from the flagstones. A fat goose turns slowly on a long iron spit, sizzling and crackling, its skin crisping to golden perfection. But who's doing the turning? Not a weary kitchen boy. Oh no. It's a brass and iron contraption mounted above the fire, its gears clicking gently as it harnesses rising hot air to spin the spit. Dinner, Renaissance style, made effortless by clever mechanics. Spit-turning machines, called roasting jacks, were widely used in wealthy European kitchens by the late 1400s. The most popular Italian versions employed a rising air current or a simple weight-driven gear to keep meat turning smoothly. Before these marvels, turning the spit was a job for the lowliest of servants, or even trained dogs who ran in a wheel to rotate the rod. Yes, truly. Turn-spit dogs were a thing. Lucky for them, machines took over. And here's the quirk you won't hear in many history classes. Some Renaissance inventors, especially in Milan, experimented with music box roasting jacks. These prototypes not only turned the meat, but also played a gentle tune as the gears spun. Imagine that, your lamb turning slowly on the spit, while soft mechanical music tinkles in the background. A dinner concert designed by clockmakers. As usual, historians squabble. Were these musical spit-turners real, or fanciful sketches in some dreamy engineer's notebook? No fully working example survives, but descriptions hint at their brief, possibly impractical existence. One skeptical historian calls them mechanical kitchen fantasies, while others insist they briefly graced the banquet halls of the rich, delighting guests with this strange culinary performance. Even without music, the spit-turner marked a small revolution in domestic life. By freeing servants from endless hours of crank-turning, these devices allowed kitchens to run more efficiently, and cooks to focus on sauces, pastries, and steaming stews. In some grand houses, multiple spit jacks turned rows of roasting game at once. Deer, peacock, swan, each cooked to perfection by gear and gravity. One design used rising smoke and heat to spin a little turbine, transferring motion through chains to the spit above. Another simpler version used a descending weight pulling a rope, like a slow, meat-turning grandfather clock. Ingenious, quiet, and utterly essential when your dinner guests included the Duke of Urbino or the Medici themselves. But why no surviving examples today? Oddly enough, most roasting jacks were scrapped when coal stoves and modern ovens arrived. Metal parts were melted down, wood frames burned for fuel. What survives are sketches, workshop notes, and a few rusty gear fragments tucked in museum drawers. And here's a sleepy thought. Somewhere in an old manor, perhaps hidden behind a crumbling hearthstone, rests the silent ghost of a spit-turner, gears stiff with soot, waiting for a fire long since gone cold. Its job done, its music lost to time. These quiet machines remind you that not every Renaissance marvel was for scholars or nobles. Some inventions simply made dinner better, easier, tastier. A victory for practicality in an age of grand dreams. So as you imagine the slow turning of a golden roast, the scent of rosemary drifting through the kitchen, the faint ticking of hidden gears, let yourself drift gently too, turning slowly toward rest, toward quiet, toward dreams. And as you ease deeper into this drowsy stroll through Renaissance wonders, your path now winds toward an invention so peculiar, so quietly ambitious, that it feels like the whisper of science fiction from a world that hadn't yet dreamed of steam engines or flight. Yes, Renaissance Italy once toyed with the earliest designs of perpetual motion machines. You heard that right. A device that could, supposedly, run forever without stopping. Imagine the delight and the disappointment. You find yourself now in the dim, cluttered workshop of a Bolognese inventor, the smell of warm brass and oil thick in the air. On a bench sits a strange wheel, wooden spokes, iron weights dangling by slender chains, poised as if to spin itself forever. A flick of the finger, and the wheel turns. For a while. Then falters. Stops. Gravity always wins, it seems. But oh, the dream was beautiful. Renaissance scholars adored motion. The movement of the heavens, the turning of water wheels, the patient slow pull of ropes and pulleys. They were obsessed with motion's secrets. By the late 1400s, Italian thinkers were sketching impossible devices. Wheels weighted to always fall forward, self-spinning tops, fountains that poured endlessly into themselves. They were seeking perpetual motion, a thing that, according to the laws of physics, which they didn't yet know, can't exist. Quirky fact time. Some of these designs were accidentally genius. One Florentine artisan created a self-turning wheel that didn't work, but whose counterweight system inspired later clock escapements, essential for the first accurate watches. Failure led to triumph, just not the triumph they expected. And naturally, the scholarly debate never stopped. Did these inventors truly believe they could cheat nature? Or were these perpetual designs really teaching tools, clever ways to puzzle young apprentices and provoke deeper thinking about mechanics? Some historians argue they were serious attempts to solve the age-old energy problem. Others say they were simply intellectual games, like Sudoku in iron and wood. One famous sketchbook, long misattributed to Leonardo himself, shows a curious wheel with hinged arms that swing outward as the wheel turns, supposedly keeping the weight unbalanced forever. Of course, it stalls after a few rotations, as every modern high school physics student could predict. But to a Renaissance mind, the hope burned brightly. What if? What if? Picture a tired apprentice standing in a candlelit workshop, spinning the wheel again, eyes wide, breath held, hoping for magic. The wheel turns, slows, stops. Sigh. Another adjustment. Another late night. Historians still wonder whether any such wheel was ever built to full size, or if they lived only in dusty sketchbooks, quiet dreams on yellowing parchment. Odd side note, some inventors claimed their designs came in dreams, or from visions of angels whispering the secret of endless motion. One friar from Venice even swore that God himself had shown him the way, though his wooden model ended up as firewood one cold winter. Divinely inspired, perhaps. Divinely impractical, certainly. And yet these experiments weren't wasted. The search for perpetual motion led Italian engineers to understand friction, balance, torque, the hidden rules of mechanics that would eventually shape real machines. Without these noble failures, perhaps the Renaissance clockmakers would have stumbled longer in the dark. In the sleepy silence of your mind, you might see such a wheel now, gently spinning, slowing, stopping, starting again as you push it in your thoughts. Like the restless tinkering of those long-ago dreamers, the wheel turns forever in imagination, if not in life. Strange to think, isn't it? That even failure can spin the world forward. And so the would-be perpetual motion machine creaks quietly in your memory as we drift onward, toward the next small, forgotten marvel of Renaissance wonder. You are growing used to these strange and quiet treasures now, drifting deeper into the forgotten corners of Renaissance Italy where ideas flickered as softly as candle flames. And here comes another, the wearable coded ring, a secret message system for spies and merchants that fit on your very own finger. Picture yourself standing in the cramped office of a Florentine silk trader. Outside, the city bustles, hooves clatter on stone, traders bellow about olives and oranges, but in here, under flickering lamplight, a merchant slides a small brass ring onto your finger. You twist the ring's top, and tiny engraved letters shift beneath your thumb. A secret code, right there on your hand. No parchment to burn, no wax seal to crack. A message no pickpocket could ever steal. But before you try decoding hidden messages in your dreams tonight, remember, if this gentle ramble is your kind of bedtime journey, like and subscribe if you feel so moved. Leave a comment with your local time. Now, let's slip this clever little invention onto your finger and carry on. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Coded jewelry was no Renaissance fantasy. By the late 1400s, merchants and diplomats used cipher discs, small, turnable wheels inscribed with letters or symbols, to scramble and unscramble secret messages. Larger ones sat on desks, but a few bold artisans miniaturized these into wearable rings or pendants. Ideal for spies, secret lovers, and those dealing in dangerous trade. And now, your quirky side note. One Milanese goldsmith allegedly crafted a ring so tiny and intricate that it required a magnifying glass, another new Renaissance toy, to set the cipher. Rumor says the ring was gifted to a noblewoman known for slipping secret notes to her lover, disguised as routine fashion. Historians still argue whether this tale is truth or delightful gossip, but somewhere in a dusty collection of court papers, her coded letters remain. Naturally, scholars cannot agree. Were these cipher rings genuinely functional, usable for real espionage, or merely novelties for the rich and curious? No complete example survives today, only sketches and scattered descriptions in merchants' journals. Some suggest they were more symbolic than practical, a quiet boast of cleverness rather than a true tool of secrecy. Others insist these rings saved lives, smuggled deals, and whispered forbidden court gossip. A peculiar detail: at least one preserved cipher disk in Venice includes strange symbols not tied to any known alphabet, perhaps an invented code only 2 people in the world understood. Historians still puzzle over this mystery language. Was it a secret trade cipher? A lover's private alphabet? No one knows. But imagine slipping such a ring onto your own hand, twisting the little wheel, feeling the soft click of metal under your thumb, watching the letters line up to spell. What? Gold for Genoa. Or maybe, meet me in the orchard at dusk. Or maybe just a sleepy, secret phrase meant only for your dreams tonight. Some merchants even commissioned matching sets, one ring for the sender, one for the receiver, so that the same cipher code could unlock the same hidden message, no matter where they wandered across the dusty trade routes of Italy. A traveling secret, tucked in your glove, safe from spies and rivals. Strangely enough, these cipher tools also inspired tiny sundials hidden inside rings, perfect for telling time without being obvious. One surviving piece includes both a compass, a sundial, and a cipher disk, all in a single gilded band. The Renaissance was nothing if not ambitious. Why carry 3 tools when one magical ring could do the job? As you stand here in this quiet office, the scent of parchment and hot wax curling in your nostrils, the ring cool against your finger, you wonder, how many secrets once spun on these little wheels? How many trades whispered? How many lovers' sighs hidden in code? You'll never know. No one ever will. And that's the beauty of it. Some inventions are meant to stay secret forever, like sleepy thoughts slipping through your fingers as you doze. The cipher ring, small, simple, clever, turns in your imagination now, spinning its forgotten code as the past murmurs gently on. And so you drift further, deeper still, into the gentle labyrinth of lost Renaissance inventions, where brilliance and oddity often slept side by side. This time, your quiet path leads you into a hushed apothecary shop in Padua, lit by smoky glass lamps and heavy with the scent of dried herbs, rose oil, and something else. Something sharper. Because here, nestled among bottles of wormwood and lavender, you find the early fog machine, a curious device meant to cool summer courtyards and keep pests away. Yes, you heard right. The Renaissance Italians, especially the wealthy Venetians and Paduans, longed not only for beauty and comfort but also for clever ways to soften the brutal summer heat. And one eccentric physician believed he'd solved the problem with what we'd now call a fog generator. The wealthy homes of Renaissance Italy were obsessed with creating pleasant microclimates. Shaded inner courtyards, fountain-cooled walls, and terracotta cooling jugs filled these grand houses. But some thinkers dreamed bigger. In the 1490s, the physician and natural philosopher Giovanni Fontana, yes, the same man who sketched armored wagons and rocket-propelled devices, proposed an air-cooling contraption that gently misted water into fine vapor across marble floors and garden paths. Fontana's fog machine worked, at least in theory, by pressurizing water inside copper pipes and releasing it through tiny nozzles to create a cooling mist. Was it perfect? Not even close. The pressure failed more often than not. Pipes clogged with mineral deposits. And the pumps, powered by hand or awkward foot treadles, made the whole system exhausting. But for a few fleeting moments, the mist swirled in the air, kissed the leaves, and cooled the skin. Your quirky tidbit: one noble family in Verona commissioned an entire fog garden, an enclosed space of stone benches and ivy-draped walls where these devices puffed out vapor on command. It was meant for summer banquets and secret trysts. Sadly, it mostly soaked the guests and attracted curious cats. The experiment was abandoned after 3 seasons. But oh, the imagination of it! And as always, historians debate. Was Fontana's fog generator ever actually built? Or just another clever sketch in one of his famously bizarre notebooks? Some scholars point to garden renovation records from Padua mentioning brass fog-making fountains. Others claim no such devices ever left the drawing board. Historians still argue whether this early misting dream ever cooled a real Renaissance summer. A funny aside, one later inventor tried using perfumed water instead of plain well water. The result: guests left drenched and smelling like overripe roses and sour almonds, hardly the sophisticated summer experience the host had promised. But the idea refused to die. Centuries later, similar misting systems would cool the gardens of Mughal India, then French royal courts, and finally modern patios and greenhouses. Like so many Renaissance inventions, the fog machine was simply too early. A dream waiting for better technology to catch up. And in your mind now, as you slowly sink into comfort, you can almost feel the cool mist drift across your face. Hear the gentle hiss of hidden nozzles. Smell the faint sweetness of crushed mint and wet stone. A quiet courtyard in twilight, forgotten by time, remembered only in dreams. The fog machine, half fantasy, half genius, softens the edge of the Renaissance world as your thoughts gently blur and wander onward to the next strange wonder. And now, at last, you arrive at the final quiet chamber in this gentle journey through forgotten Renaissance wonders. But this room feels different, lighter, warmer, tinged with sweetness. For here waits perhaps the most delightfully odd invention of all, the portable marzipan press, the Renaissance solution to the eternal problem of how to make fancy sweets on the go. Yes, friend. You, standing in the kitchens of a sprawling Florentine villa, surrounded by copper pots and sugar loaves, hold in your hand a curious little box. About the size of a jewelry case, made of polished walnut and lined with soft velvet. But this is no ordinary box. It's a miniature press for shaping marzipan into perfect roses, doves, or, if the occasion demanded, tiny edible suits of armor. Marzipan, a soft paste of almond meal, sugar, and rosewater, was the absolute luxury sweet of Renaissance courts. Rich families displayed marzipan sculptures during feasts. Castles, animals, mythical creatures, all formed from this fragrant, moldable treat. But shaping them by hand took time. Time the busy rich didn't have. Enter the portable marzipan press. Tiny hinged molds, often made of tin or fine brass, that let cooks and guests alike press out instant confections. You'd slip a ball of marzipan into the mold, squeeze gently, and pop out a perfect lion or pear or tiny boot. It was Renaissance fast food, except made entirely of almonds and whimsy. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some presses included the family crest or favorite animal. One famous example, now lost, allegedly stamped tiny marzipan likenesses of the Duke of Milan's prized hunting dogs. Historians still argue whether this was a real court custom or just an apocryphal kitchen joke. As always, scholars debate. Were these presses common among the nobility, or rare novelties found only in the kitchens of the super-rich? No clear records survive. A few battered molds rest in museum drawers, engraved with florals and geometric patterns. But personal, portable marzipan presses? That mystery lingers, half sweet, half forgotten. An unexpected footnote: some presses doubled as seals. If you needed to mark a secret letter, or, say, the lid of a rare spice jar, you could stamp wax or soft clay with the same mold you used for marzipan roses. Efficiency, Renaissance style. Imagine now the quiet joy of such an invention. A little traveling box, slipped into a velvet satchel. A ball of fresh almond paste, wrapped in fine linen. On a picnic in the hills of Tuscany, or after a secret midnight card game in Venice, you pull out your mold and press a tiny marzipan fox. Sweet, fragrant, perfect. A private delight in an age of grandeur. Naturally, Renaissance pranksters found uses too. One court chef reportedly molded fake marzipan coins to trick a rival cook. Biting into one revealed almond sweetness instead of silver. A gentle jest, and no harm done. Unless you disliked surprises. And so here you stand, turning this quiet little press in your hand, feeling the smooth metal warmed by the kitchen's hearth. The scent of almonds and sugar lingers in the air. Outside, the faint sound of lute strings drifts in through the window. Another small, forgotten genius of the Renaissance, smiling sleepily from the shadows of history. And with this gentle marvel, our journey reaches its last pause. So now, with every strange and clever invention gently unfolded like pages of a dream, the world of Renaissance Italy begins to dim and soften around you. The stone streets fade, the candlelit workshops quiet. The scent of almond paste and brass, of wet marble and old parchment, slips into the dusk. You've wandered long and far tonight, through courts and kitchens, gardens and guild halls, and your feet are light with the journey. Let the cool mist of the fog garden brush your cheek once more, gentle as sleep. Let your fingers turn the tiny cipher ring in the twilight, spelling secret words no one else will ever read. The water clocks tick quietly in the shadows. The glass lenses gleam, forgotten on the workbench. Even the mechanical theater figures have stilled, their little wooden faces smiling softly in the dark. Historians may still argue. Scholars may puzzle and debate. But for now, here in this drifting space between waking and dreams, all the old questions rest. Did the fog machines work? Did lovers truly trade secret marzipan molds? It doesn't matter. The past, like sleep, holds its secrets close. You can almost hear the faint creak of a leather-bound notebook closing. The whisper of a silk sleeve brushing parchment. The soft sigh of time itself, folding these lost inventions gently away. Let your breathing slow. Let your thoughts settle like dust in a quiet library. You are safe and warm, and far from the hurried world. Nothing more to build. Nothing more to learn tonight. Only the slow, golden drift into rest. Sleep well, curious traveler. Tomorrow the world will wait. But for now, only dreams.